company branding in Japan.
Mm.
And basically, how do we get here was that we were talking about, okay, so how can Japan develop itself in a way that in the next few years we will be able to generate jobs that will be lost in certain industries due to automation and in particular due to AI. And we can expect to disruption in certain industries, and especially industries where the position of the laborers is vulnerable, is weak. Think about, for example, taxi drivers. Think about staff in convenience stores. People who are not making high wage per today probably do not have very deep pockets to finance their transition. So these are industries that are waiting to be disrupted very, very soon. And our discussion was focusing on, okay, so what can we do? What can Japan do? This is how we got into nation branding. As we saw in the video from Wally Orlings, one of the way that you can measure the strength of a nation is by comparing similar products produced in country A versus country B. And one example was cosmetics. Cosmetics produced in France, the price of cosmetics produced in France versus the price of cosmetics produced in Poland. A similar product, but produced in a different country, actually resulted in a 5 times higher price. So that's what the power of a country can be. People don't trust cosmetics made in Poland, but they do trust cosmetics made in France, and that is reflected in this enormous price gap. We saw the same thing when Toyota launched their Lexus. Basically, there was an undisputed market leader, Mercedes-Benz, that what the strategy that Lexus chose was to create a luxury brand that would emulate Mercedes-Benz, that would produce a car that was similar to Mercedes-Benz, only with a higher quality and at a superior price point. And that was necessary, otherwise there was no way that they could compete in this lucrative branch. So branding is very important. That can add a very important value to your product, to your country, to the producers in your country. Now, last Saturday we were discussing about Apple. We looked at a video from Apple and how they brand. And basically, what Steve Jobs was telling us was that when Apple was branding itself, they were defining themselves. They were not telling us what they were making. Very well designed, easy to use hardware. But instead of that, they were talking about think differently, so that they were answering the question who Apple was or who they wanted to be, and this was their brand story. And we saw the video Think Different, and Think Different was basically really setting them apart from mainstream. They were not telling the market how they were similar, how their products were first class. They were telling the market who they were and why they mattered. And this was very successful in creating a brand. Now, when you create a brand, you need to follow through, and you need to basically not only tell who you are, but you need to show who you are. And you do this not only through your product, but also through your customer service, through your retail channel, through your distribution, through everything that the company does. Needs to be the brand needs to be reflected in everything that the company does. A brand is what a brand does, you could say. And then we were looking and we were discussing about Japan, about how it has been difficult for Japanese brands to make a very clear statement to tell us who they are. And what we discussed is that, like for example, certain brands were not being very clear and not being very explicit, make choices as to who they were, because they are afraid to alienate markets. But if people don't know who you are, why would they buy from you? Because people don't only buy with their wallets, they don't only buy what you make, but they also buy who you are. If Apple launches a new iPhone, it's not just a new product, but you see that people automatically look at it and say, okay, well, maybe I want to buy this as well. So you create brand loyalty, which creates value. Now, there are exceptions as to where Japanese branding has been extremely successful. First of all, actually, the brand of the country Japan itself is one of the most valuable country brands in the world. So Japan is doing something very right. And one of the reasons I believe is that Japan is actually different. They are very distinctive compared to other countries. They have their own culture. They have upheld their own culture. And people who visit Japan consistently have a very good experience visiting this country. So the brand Japan, the brand made in Japan, means something, especially to Japanese. But it's a very strong brand. Now, as distinctive as Japan is, as non-distinct, a lot of their manufacturers are. It has been very difficult for big brands to make a clear choice, to basically tell them how they are different. Like, for example, if you look at the camera makers, to me it's not really clear why Nikon is different from Canon, why it's different from other camera brands. But one exception is Sony. Sony used to be a very distinct brand, one of the strongest brands in the world, with their slogan, "It's a Sony," a very clear brand strategy, very well executed, and that gained popularity around the world. That has been the exception rather than the rule. But there is another brand that we were discussing that is very successful overseas, and that's Uniqlo from past retailing. And Uniqlo is also quite distinct, but why is it distinct? Uno-san was mentioning comfort. That's how they brand themselves. Now I have been looking up foreign comment on Uniqlo brand and selected a video, and actually I think that gives a pretty good impression as to why the Uniqlo brand is distinctive and is different from the other brands. So, Uno-san, if you wouldn't mind and show the stood out for me was actually Lifewear.
It's interesting. Good video. Right.
Yes. So this is a clear branding strategy from Uniqlo. Then I have a 1.5 minute video from Toyota. Let's have a
You
look
want to
there
see
too.
Toyota?
Yeah.
Toyota's advertisement video. They try to change it for advertisement, right?
Right. This advertisement was not aimed at the Japanese audience. It was aimed at the UK audience.
My question is, how come 1 minute?
Oh, this is they probably developed this commercial to be shown on British television. And
TV commercial. Okay, I got it. The time is limited, usually 1 minute,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. But if you look at this commercial, there's always a better way. Yeah. I really don't feel anything is being said about the Toyota brand. It's a series of cars. That's it. There's no deeper thought, no deeper message. There's no communication of what Toyota stands for. There's always a better way. Maybe they're trying to sell the Kaizen idea.